Hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome back to the podcast. I am your host, Monica, and today's episode is a little bit of everything because honestly, so is life right now. We are starting off with Michigan doing what Michigan does best absolutely unhinged winter behavior, exploding trees, frost quakes, Arctic cold so aggressive that it has you questioning your life choices and naturally, we're also wondering what the animals are doing because someone has to be okay with all of this. Then we will shift gears into something much heavier. We're talking about Netflix's new documentary, Kidnapped Elizabeth Smart. This is not a casual true crime watch, it's a survivor story told in her own voice. And it's powerful, it's heartbreaking, and it's important. So we'll walk through the case, the investigation, the failures, and the resilience, and why stories like this deserve care when we talk about them. And finally, we are ending on a lighter note, a very real note with a mom segment because after all of that, we need to breathe. All right, folks, if you have been scrolling through social media, you might have seen the latest buzz about Michigan and I guess most all of the Midwest right now exploding trees. Yes, that's right. Mother Nature's stand up routine. But before you picture giant tree trunks launching like bark rockets across someone's driveway, let's get real about what's actually happening here. So, scientists and weather nerds out there are saying that when temperatures plummet below zero, the water inside trees, aka sap, starts to freeze and rigidly expand just at the absolute wrong time. Meanwhile, the bark and the wood surrounding it are contracting because they're freezing faster than the inside can keep up. So it's like a tug of war and it's building like serious internal pressure until the trunk makes a violent split. And with a loud crack, that sounds like a gunshot. So that noise is what has everyone saying, oh my God, the trees are exploding. But technically, it's a frost crack, not literal explosion in like the blockbuster sense or whatever. So here is the fun part. If you crawl into the woods right after one of these loud pops, you won't find a tree crater or, flying shrapnel. Instead, you're more likely to see a very long vertical like split running up the bark, almost like the tree has gotten a really dramatic zit to pop. The damage is cosmetically dramatic, but usually not fatal for the tree. And many will slowly heal that scar over time. So that's a fun fact, right? I really enjoyed learning about trees. And now, when you thought Michigan's winter had peaked at embarrassing to the rest of the country, enter frost quakes. Yes, frost quakes, the weather world's version of the earth sneezing. This phenomenon is also called cryocesium. Cryocesium. Okay, I'm so sorry, guys. I totally am butchering that word. The English language is kind of difficult for me, but somehow yet I'm here. So this happens when water in the ground freezes super fast and expands, building pressure until the soil or the rock suddenly cracks and lets go with a big boom or like a tremor. It's like the Earth's version of cracking its knuckles, basically, but very much louder and it's in your backyard. The key thing to know about frost quakes is that they sound like earthquakes, sometimes shaking your house or rattling windows, but they aren't caused by tectonic plates or like magma movements. It's really just water turning into ice underground and then expanding and then snapping the earth like a credit card over the edge of a table, basically, or like a glow stick. Yeah, you can think of it like a glow stick too. So, in one weekend, you might be hearing trees crack like someone's firing off backyard rifles. and the ground beneath your feet, letting us know that it is very much alive, awake, and moving. Just kind of Michigan's way of saying, welcome to winter. Meteorologists across Michigan have issued extreme cold warnings and wind chills dropping into the -20s and -30s. Yes, I said negative. That is cold AF. The kind of temps that, paper might freeze in your hand if you're not awfully careful. Frostbite could happen in under 10 to 15 minutes of exposed skin, and hypothermia becomes a real threat if you stay out in it too long. So, I also had just this random thought because this is how my brain works. What is happening to the animals? Like, what are the animals doing? So, like, picture this out in the woods. A deer is probably like looking at this cold, like it accidentally wandered into Narnia and thought this was not in the brochure. And then, like elk and deer will generally like dig into a brush or like find dense evergreen cover or hunker down in thick forests to block wind and conserve warmth. Smaller critters, rabbits, foxes, raccoons, they all are basically just like tucked into burrows or nests. They have insulated with fur, leaves, and good vibes, hoping the winter gets over very soon. Birds. So, this was another thought as well. They've basically turned into like flying toddlers, fluffing up their feathers like they're wearing like 1,000 down jackets, eating everything that isn't nailed down to keep their metabolism firing off, and relying on feeders like they owe them rent. Have you ever watched a chickadee puff up like in the cold? It's like nature's little marshmallow, and honestly, it's pretty adorable. Even squirrels, those drama queens of winter, are probably just sitting in their nest gnawing on, whatever food they conserved from last year. Meanwhile, the fish in the lakes are basically like, warmth. What is that? Down below the ice, unaffected by all of our human freakouts above. So basically, Michigan's winter weather right now, it's mixing science, drama, and a dash of theatrical flair. Exploding sounding trees, but really it's just cracks. Earth rumbling frost quakes, but really it's just like there's no tectonic danger. And temperatures cold enough to challenge polar bears on their home turf. Just another weekend in the mitten where even the weather has memes. All right, guys, welcome back. This one deserves a pause before we start because this isn't true crime as entertainment. This is a real person, a real child, and a real story that still echoes for a lot of people. So we are going back to June 5th, 2002. Elizabeth Smart is 14 years old, asleep in her bedroom in Federal Heights, Salt Lake City, Utah, a wealthy, quiet neighborhood where people genuinely believed things like this didn't happen. Elizabeth is in bed in her room alongside her younger sister, Mary Catherine, and they are both suddenly awakened when a man appears in their room. He tells Elizabeth that if she screams, he will kill her. Mary Catherine is completely frozen. Fight, flight, freeze. She freezes. She watches as this man takes her sister out of the room. The moment he's gone, she runs to wake up her parents. At first, her parents don't believe it. They think, maybe Mary Catherine is having a nightmare, but they search the house room by room, calling her name, and Elizabeth is gone. There is no sign of struggle, no noise, no chaos. This is when the police are called. Mary Catherine is the only witness to this kidnapping, and she says something chilling like, the voice sounded familiar, but she couldn't place it. So that's weird right off the bat, right? Investigators know that statistically, when a child is abducted from their home, the perpetrator is often someone known to the family, and the red flags just start piling up. So that night, the home alarm was off. The windows had no scuff marks. A chair was placed neatly below the window, almost like too neatly. First of all, just like how ironic is it that, you know, it's 2002. Just like picture this. Again, it's 2002. This has to be a pretty decently wealthy home, right? To have a security system, especially in such a wealthy area. I get why they have a security system. It's just weird to me that, like, on that specific night, the alarm was not engaged, and I guess I have no explanation for that. It's just like a little bit weird, and investigators thought so too. They later believed that the chair that was placed underneath the window may have been staged. So, police searched the home and find 12 computers, a very unusually high number of devices for 2002. I remember our family had one computer, the same one from 1999, and that was the family computer. We did not have 12. And because Elizabeth's dad, Ed Smart, becomes very vocal in the media after her abduction, public suspicion starts to kind of shift. People start whispering and they are like becoming incredibly suspicious of her dad. This completely wrecks him. Ed is so overwhelmed that he ends up being admitted to a psychiatric hospital. Eventually, he takes and passes a polygraph test. Still, the damage is done for being accused of staging this whole kidnapping with his daughter. So, police also look at extended family. Elizabeth's uncle Tom takes a polygraph, comes back inconclusive. But after, some more extensive investigation, no family member is ever linked to the crime. So we're back to square one at this point. Then comes another gut punch. A burned body is found near the Great Salt Lake. The family is notified and they tell them there's a body that's been found. It is a female, but we don't know for sure if it's Elizabeth. They come to find out it is not Elizabeth. Again, hope, despair, and hope again. Like, this family is going through like this crazy roller coaster. And then who that person was remains largely like unanswered, like at least in the documentary. But for Elizabeth's parents, the news brings something, equally fragile and equally terrifying, and that's hope. So now, investigators are beginning to focus on a man called Richard Reese. He was a contractor who had worked on the smart home and had previous run ins with police. His home is searched, and then jewelry belonging to Elizabeth's mother was found at his place. He had been given a white Jeep at the time by Ed Smart just to do in and out tasks in regards to the contract work that he was hired to do at the home. And then when the Jeep was recovered, it had like hundreds of unexplained miles added onto it. So it's kind of like, what's going on here? Where did you go? Why are you driving so much? Did you drive in the woods? Does this guy have Elizabeth? Police become convinced that Reese did it. Except the problem is, which I guess it's not a problem, but the smoking gun in this situation, Mary Catherine says very clearly that this is not the man who took Elizabeth, even though police are convinced it is. What do we do here? You know what I mean? Like, are we going to trust the eyewitness who was in a very traumatic state at the time? Or are we going to kind of go off the facts and all of the circumstantial evidence at this point? So, 7 weeks after Elizabeth's kidnapping, her cousin is nearly abducted. Like, the same method, you guys. Same cut window screens, like same chair under the window. Problem here is Reese is already in jail. So kind of weird, right? Now it's like, what's going on? Is there like a copycat, or, do we have the wrong guy? So police become desperate. They consider immunity deals, and then they want Reese to just admit fault. Tell them where Elizabeth is, explain to them what happened. And then suddenly he dies in custody from a stroke caused by an aneurysm. So, like, we're back to square one at this point. If he knew anything, that died with him. And then at this point in the documentary, everything shifts because Elizabeth, she's been alive this entire time. And now it's her turn to tell the story of what actually happened and the events leading up to and after her kidnapping. She finally tells us who took her. Her kidnapper was a man named Brian David Mitchell, a deeply disturbed man who referred to himself as Emmanuel, a so called prophet of God. He believed that he was chosen divinely instructed to take multiple wives, including children. His wife, Wanda Barzy, fully participated in Elizabeth's captivity. Mitchell had previously been on police radar. He had worked as a street preacher, had erratic behavior, and very critically, had been in the smart home before as well for contract work. That's why the voice sounded familiar. Elizabeth recounts being walked through the woods, arriving at a tent. Wanda emerges. And again, these people are going under code names Emmanuel, and I think it was like Hitzabal is what Wanda was calling herself, or whatever Cuckoo Bird named her. She then hugs Elizabeth and then starts washing her feet. And then she starts to undress her. Elizabeth resists at this point and is threatened. Mitchell then walks into the tent and announces, "We are married now." Elizabeth says, "You can't kidnap me and marry me." Like 14-year-old girl, plain and simple facts, but like that was his delusion. Okay. This part is pretty tough. He goes on to rape Elizabeth at this point and she passes out. When she wakes up, she is in chains. Elizabeth talks about the shame that she felt in this moment. She was raised religious and she was terrified of what her family would think, confused about God at this point, confused about herself. And it's really evident that shame becomes one of those tools Mitchell uses to control her at this time. So at this point, she hears search parties calling her name. Mitchell holds a knife to her and threatens her family if she speaks out and screams for help. Fear, basically, at this point for Elizabeth, is becoming a cage, you guys. She's taken through town repeatedly in plain sight, disguised in like a white gown and veil. And then at one point, they are at a public library, and a detective approaches to ask Elizabeth if she's seen herself. Like he walks up with a picture and he asks to see Elizabeth's face. Mitchell at this point refuses, citing that it's against his religious beliefs and that only her father and her husband will ever see her face. I don't know why, but the detective walks away at this point. Elizabeth does not cry out because survival sometimes needs to look like silence. So eventually, a tip comes through on the news after this like composite sketch is created of Emmanuel or Mitchell as the suspect. His own family confirms his disturbing history. Flyers circulate, and someone remembers seeing a veiled girl with a man at this place called Soup or Salad. So, what had happened is that Mitchell had taken Elizabeth out of state lines. Like he was becoming extremely evident that people were looking for him and, they got to get out of here. They got a jet. And so he takes Elizabeth and his nut job wife across state lines and months go by. So by March, Elizabeth begins carefully manipulating her captor. She is praising him, reinforcing his delusions, convincing him eventually to return to Salt Lake City, which I thought this part was just amazing because for such a young girl, she is so smart at this point. Because I think this is like 7 months later after her kidnapping. She's been gone a really long time. And she's telling him, like, oh, God cameth to me in a dream and, said that we should return to Salt Lake City, but I know that only you can speak to God and all this nonsense. And Delulu over there is like, yes, you're finally listening, and only I can make that decision because only God speaks through me. But yes, I think he is saying to return to Salt Lake City. And at this point, His whole plan when they get back is to go back into the woods. This whole tent camping life. But the thing is, when Elizabeth makes it into Salt Lake City, she knows her surroundings. She knows that city. She knows from where she is how long it's going to take her to walk home or get home. Geographically, Elizabeth knows Salt Lake. So she's planning her escape at this point. She thinks that this is a much better geographical location for her to make her escape. So they are in town. They're walking down the road and an anonymous call comes in. The police stop them on the road and they're asking them for identification. And they're all like, "No, we don't have identification." They can't give the officers anything. So what they do is that they separate Elizabeth from Mitchell and Barzy. She's wearing a terrible wig, and it's so obvious that they put Elizabeth in a disguise. And obviously, police know something's going on, something's wrong. And the police officer asks her, "Are you Elizabeth Smart?" And she's so terrified at this moment. Like, she just can't answer because she doesn't know what's going to happen. How is Mitchell going to react at this point? So instead, she just does the most basic, like, um, non make obvious response because Mitchell and Wanda Cuckoo Pants are like obviously watching at this point. And then she replies back, "Thou sayest," which in, I don't know, whatever religious talk or dialect that they were using means yes. So we are actually, I think it was 9 months. After 9 months, she is free, you guys. Like, that is nuts. Elizabeth says for a long time, speaking about what happened, carried deep embarrassment and shame within her. And then at that time, she didn't have like the language or the support or the resources or survivor resources that she should have. And if you're listening to this and any part of this story hits close to home, please hear this clearly. What happened to you was not your fault. Silence can be survival, and shame belongs to the perpetrator, not the victim. There are resources out there, and you don't have to carry this alone. If you or someone you know needs support, rain.org is a great website. They have a phone number, 1-800-656-HOPE. The National Sex Assault Hotline is also available 24/7. And if you are outside the US, local crisis lines can be found through international advocacy networks. So in this story, Elizabeth Smart survived, then chose to later, many years later, speak and become an advocate and help others heal. And if you're not ready to speak yet, you're still worthy of help, safety, and peace. So that was the story of Elizabeth Smart. You can watch this documentary on Netflix. That's where I watched it. I thought it was very informative, and I really hope Elizabeth got a lot of peace and closure from being able to tell her story in her own words. All right, guys, welcome back. Let's lighten the mood because, wow, that last segment was a lot. So, welcome to the mom update where things are less traumatic, but still wildly unhinged in their own way. First on the docket, weaning off the bottle. No one, and I mean no one, prepares you for how much money you will spend trying to find the right sippy cup. Like, why are there so many options? Straw, soft spout, hard spout, 360 cups, weighted straws, silicone, stainless steel, dishwasher safe, not dishwasher safe. And your kid will reject 90% of them on just vibes alone. Didn't like the color? Doesn't matter if there's bluey on it. Or bingo, doesn't matter. This phase is like kind of just trial and error, and your Amazon order history is looking like you're opening up a daycare. And the worst part, the cup that they love today will absolutely be offensive to them by Thursday. But here's the thing, my big boy is so stinking smart. It honestly blows my mind daily. Like, he's amazing. So he is obsessed with Danny Go. If Danny Go walked into our house, my kid would forget that me or his dad even exist. He knows the wiggle dance words. He hits the moves on cue. And when Danny says, stop, my child will go, stop, like literally on beat every single time, which is amazing and also humbling because I have been saying stop for months and apparently I need better choreography. And speaking of consistency, let's talk about the poop update. Nothing has changed. Still pooping in the tub, still a lifestyle, and still a personal choice he is standing firmly behind. I've just stopped asking questions at this point. We're just observing, supporting, disinfecting, all of the above. Lastly, all right, this one surprised me. I am finally losing weight slowly and naturally and without panic. And I honestly don't know if it's because of fasting or maybe just like some kind of hormone regulation or my body just finally decided to cooperate after everything has been through. Maybe it's all of it. Maybe it's none of it. I really couldn't tell you, but I'm choosing to celebrate it without overanalyzing because for once it feels good instead of, stressful. So that's my mom update for this week. There is cups everywhere, a tiny dancer who listens better to Danny Go than me, unchanged poop status, and a small win for my body. And honestly, I'll take it. All right, friends, that's it for today's episode. I can hear my little dude crying in the background, so I think nap time is over. We have covered a lot from Mother Nature losing her mind to a story that reminds us how resilient the human spirit can be, to the everyday chaos and beauty of motherhood. And if there's one thing I hope you take away from this episode, it's this: life can hold heavy and light at the same time, and both deserve space and peace. Before you go, I want to say this clearly. If the conversation around Elizabeth Smart brought anything up for you, discomfort, memories, emotions, you are not alone and you don't have to carry that quietly. There are resources, there are people who will listen, and there is support available to you when you're ready. I'll list those resources in the show notes. But again, thank you so much for spending your day with me today, or a part of your day with me. Thank you for listening, for sharing, for being a part of this space and this community and this little podcast family that we're all creating together. If this episode resonated with you, feel free to share it with somebody who might need it, or just come back next week for more real talk, mom chaos, and whatever wild headline we end up unpacking next. Take care of yourselves, guys. Hug your people. I'll talk to you soon. Okay. Love you. Bye. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. The facts are fuzzy. Our stories and opinions are just that: stories and opinions, not meant to be taken as professional advice.